I want to welcome everyone to the Heritage Village Author Talk series. This is a great series that we do with local homegrown authors talking about local pieces of history and exciting things going on in the Tampa Bay area. And today we are lucky to have Joshua Ginsberg come in and talk about his new book, Tampa Bay Scavenger. So welcome, Joshua.
Well, thank you so much for having me back, Monica. I know we spoke almost exactly a year ago
Yes.
regarding my first book, Secret Tampa Bay. And I do have a new book, which is something a little bit different. And I think it's a good time for it. And I think it'll be really exciting. And I've prepared, this presentation for us, and I'll try to get through it fairly swiftly so that folks can ask questions and so that I can answer anything that people are curious about. And before we begin, I was thinking about, is there a theme? Is there sort of connective tissue between my first book, my current book, and some of my upcoming endeavors? And I think I go back to something that someone said to me when I first moved here a little over 5 years ago, which is blink and you'll miss it. And I wasn't entirely sure what they meant at the time, but now having lived here again, just for over 5 years, in that span of time, I feel like I have really come to understand and appreciate what they were trying to tell me. And we'll talk about that as we go. And I thought, my current book is really an extension of the story that began with my first book. And I think folks are probably somewhat familiar with my story. Just about 7 years ago, my wife and I were living in Chicago, and a friend of mine passed away suddenly, and it was kind of a wake-up call for me. He and I had been sort of nerdy outsider kids together, growing up outside of Philadelphia. And we had always encouraged each other to pursue a lot of creative endeavors and writing and what have you. And when he passed, it made me realize, maybe I don't want to spend the rest of my life in Chicago. And if I'm not doing what I want to be doing, then, maybe it's time for me to get to it. So, so the adventure begins kind of with Secret Tampa Bay, which came from my move here to Tampa. The adventure continues now with Tampa Bay Scavenger, which is 361 rhyming riddles that covers Hillsborough, Pinellas, Manatee, and Sarasota County. And
Wow.
it's essentially a gamification, a way to sort of replicate some of my own experience and some of the excitement of sort of finding strange, offbeat, little-known places. I am under contract for another book, which I'm working on for 2022, that is called Oldest Tampa Bay. And it is thematically relevant because I feel like so much of my story has been sort of personally or emotionally time traveling back to when I was a kid. So now, I'm applying that to the external world and trying to find, what's been here for 50 or 100 or 200 or 1,000 years. And then, we'll talk about each of these. I'll probably end with a little bit about kind of why I think it's important to sort of travel and explore things in a different way. but I talked a bit about the origin story. There's my friend Steve, how, you know, his passing was really a shock to my system. And that was when Jen and I, my wife and I, decided to move to Tampa. And I wanted, you know, before departing Chicago, I thought it would be cool to spend my last 6 months getting to know the city in a way that I never had, really seeking out all of the things you can only do in that one place. And maybe some are touristy, like getting a hot dog at Wrigley Field or riding the Ferris wheel. And some were super obscure, like finding, you know, hidden tunnels and subterranean passageways that had been built up, or, you know, the city had been sort of built up over. And
So
I
they do
found,
exist.
yeah, I mean, it is amazing how deep, both literally and figuratively, the history of Chicago goes. And it opened my eyes to a different way to see where you live, because I think no matter where we live, even if we live in the most exciting place on earth, even if we live in like a traveling circus sideshow caravan, you know, after some amount of time, that just sort of becomes, you know, the place you live and where you sleep. And, you know, it's the backdrop against which you live your day-to-day life. But this whole experience was kind of a figure ground phenomenon where suddenly what had been the ground really came to the front, and it inspired me to learn a place. So when we moved to Tampa, I wanted to continue this because I realized, you know, it's not just a great way to say goodbye to a place, but it's also a great way to learn a new place. And so my wife and I have continued to do that. And then more recently with both the scavenger hunt and something I created called the Obscuratorium. I feel like
I love that.
thank you. Yeah, it's a kind of a shout out to Atlas Obscura, which was a big aid in helping me sort of discover what is hidden and strange and unusual. And so I feel like those two things represent another transition where I've gone, you know, originally from being a seeker to then becoming a writer about these things. And in some ways, maybe now becoming a creator of these things. And so that sort of leads me to how everything started. So when I first moved here, you know, again, I was creating sort of adventure lists with my wife, and we were trying to really get to know the place. And at this point, I started blogging. I started writing about these places. Originally, like I said, there were a lot of tools that I used, such as Atlas Obscura and Roadside America and Weird Florida. And I mean, there is a tremendous list of tools, Abandoned Florida. And over
we have no
time,
lack of roadside attractions, that is for sure.
yeah, I mean, really, in a lot of ways, I think the oldest sort of roadside attraction in America is probably Lucy the Elephant in New Jersey at the Jersey Shore. But some of its contemporaries, like you know, the glass bottom boats at Silver Springs, that sort of launched a lot of the tourism here in Florida. And so really, you know, the state gave rise to a tremendous number of those. You have Sunken Garden in St. Pete is another one that is, it's got to be among the oldest continually operating. And so, you know, as I started writing about these things, I realized, you know, maybe what was happening here was that I was compiling a book. And I looked around for publishers, and I was lucky enough to connect with Reedy Press, who happened to have a need for someone to write about these things in the Tampa Bay area. And so, pretty quickly it was off to the races. And, I was beginning with maybe 50% of the book already written. So, so that was an advantage. But even in the 5 years that I've been here, and that book just came out a little bit over a year ago, and in that space of time, some things have gone and some things have changed. And I go back to what I was told about blink and you'll miss it. Well, Airstream Ranch,
Oh, yeah.
on I-4, there used to be these Airstreams that were sort of like a Stonehenge type thing. And whenever, and the new owner said, oh, it's a little kitschy, we're going to get rid of it. But
that was such a mistake. It was such a mistake.
Yeah.
The Airstream Stonehenge was the best. It's the best way to promote your whatever your business was off that exit right there, because you couldn't help but notice it.
Yeah, and I find even though it's been gone maybe for 6 or 12 months, whenever I drive to Orlando, I find myself looking for it. It's sort of like, and now there's just kind of that sad, empty space.
Yeah.
There was an escape room called Rabbit Hole Adventure Games that I wrote about, which I believe has also closed. My hope is that maybe they'll create some other iteration. But, within a couple of years, it'll probably be time for me to create another edition, because things change here so rapidly. Literally blink and you'll miss it. And that experience kind of accelerated when I was doing the Scavenger Hunt, and now that I'm working on Oldest, I am really seeing how quickly things change. There were also a lot of things in the first book that I didn't get to. And I continue to discover and visit new things every day. This week, my hope is to get out and see a sculpture called the Great Ball of Pliers, which is in fact just a giant sort of dome-shaped artwork created out of pliers.
Where is that?
Gosh, I'm trying to remember. It's not Valrico, but it's somewhere kind of, outside of Tampa, still in Hillsborough. In Pinellas, one of the things I didn't cover in the book was the country's first open air post office, which is right there in St. Pete, or the
beautiful building.
It is, and apparently it created a bit of a stir because the government does not like things that sort of deviate from standard. So when they wanted to create this, apparently the government was sort of threatening to defund that post office, but they got it all worked out. It was a minor kerfluffle. More recently, the Museum of the American Arts and Crafts Movement opened in St. Pete.
Yay!
Yeah, which
finally.
I know that was planned for a long time, and I have yet to get there. I have also never been, and this is the season for it, I have never been to the Oakdale Christmas House.
Oh, I used to live down the street from the Oakdale Christmas House. It is quite the display.
Yeah, that's my understanding, is it's very hard to miss.
Yeah.
But this year, I will finally make it there with my wife. And I know the baseball museum, I think, finally opened in Ybor. And, a lot of these were postponed. It was a really weird couple years with COVID and with all sorts of things. Yeah. But it was also a strange time to release a travel guide when all of a sudden nobody can travel. But thankfully, there's so much you can do outdoors here, including, of course, Heritage Village. But so a lot of these things, even as, and we're not finished with the pandemic, but places where you can be safe, you can be outdoor, you can be, socially distanced. And I promise you, a lot of the places I wrote about, social distancing is not an issue. You will probably be the only one there. You want to
Yes.
see the grave of America's oldest man? My guess is you will be the only one there. But it also forced me to get creative, because how do you market a book about travel with all of these considerations? And originally, I started converting maybe 10 or 20 of the things in Secret Tampa Bay, into rhyming riddles. And I was working actually with Rabbit Hole Adventure Games to try to turn that into kind of a one-day scavenger hunt. And it ultimately didn't come to fruition. However, I thought this idea of doing a scavenger hunt would be a lot of fun. And I see more and more of that. And I think as the world opens up, as we kind of figure out, what are things we can do that are safe and that are family friendly, and that kind of restore some of the weirdness and fun of the world. I think scavenger hunts are a great way to do it. And that brought me even further back into my childhood, when I remember a love of riddles. And J.R.R. Tolkien had some great riddles in The Hobbit, and RPG games, had a lot of riddles to solve. And then I tried to combine that with sort of like a Ready Player One style leaderboard, and really make this a fun and interactive way to share not only some of these strange and unusual places I've found, but to really share the way I experience it, and some of the fun that I have when I'm going to find these things. How do I replicate that? And how do I, find other ways to bring this content to life, and make it interactive? And again, about 95% of the book is places that are outdoors, so people don't have to worry if they're uncomfortable going inside somewhere. And there is this online component, so people they don't have to, but if they choose to, they can upload their answers and photos to the website, which
that's so cool.
Yeah, thank you. So tampabayscavenger.com. And it's free to register, and as they go through, it unlocks sort of different puzzle pieces, and there is something small and fun sort of waiting for them at the end, a final phrase they have to unscramble, and that unlocks a kind of a small reward.
I'm looking forward to getting this book, because when we talked last year, I got a copy of Secret Tampa Bay, and it was not, it's not in this format. It's essentially, you go through it and you're like, oh, I had no idea, but it tells you where to go. It tells you what you're doing. So this is going to be a real treat.
Yeah, this one, it's set up by by county, and then within each county by neighborhood. And some of the neighborhoods are a little wonky, like Clearwater has a lot of kind of unincorporated portions, but I've tried as much as possible to group them together. And there's riddles, and also 361 rhyming riddles for people to solve. And they lead all over the place. I'll share one with you, and it's probably one that you're familiar with. Many a president, celebrity, and mogul have been the White Queen's guest. She was rescued from the wrecking ball when JMC chose to invest. So if you
Many
know,
of our listeners know the answer to that riddle.
yeah,
Put
that's
it in the
one
chat
of them
box if you know.
in the Largo and Bel Air area. And there very well maybe some at the at Heritage Village and at the Botanical Gardens. So I was able to go a little bit deeper because there's, you know, with Secret Tampa Bay, I had 90 chapters, so I could cover really sort of 90 different things. With this, there were 361 riddles, so I had a chance to explore further a lot of areas that I hadn't before, like Anna Maria Island and Sarasota, and really get deeper into places like Tarpon Springs and Largo and Bel Air and, you know, even St. Pete and downtown Tampa and Plant City. So this was a lot of fun for me.
I
And
love that you've grouped them geographically, because it's for someone like me and my husband, for us to do that on a bicycle sounds like a fantastic Saturday afternoon. If it wasn't grouped geographically, we'd be like, if we get the riddle wrong, we might end up in like, we can't bike 15 miles away, I guess is what
right.
I'm too
And
old
you know,
for that anymore, but
and this for me was very much a learning experience and sort of my first foray, I guess, into sort of game design, where I wanted to be fun, I wanted to be challenging, but I also wanted to be solvable. I don't want it to be impossible.
yeah.
And you know, one of the things that inspired me was something that I've been doing the last 6 years called GISH, or the Greatest International Scavenger Hunt. And it's something hosted every year by actor and poet Misha Collins, and who starred in the show Supernatural, if you've ever watched it. He was the angel Castiel in that show. But he puts together this list of, you know, a couple hundred bizarre and seemingly impossible, crazy things, you know, building the world's largest balloon animal sculpture, or you know, making a life-size sculpture of Michelangelo's artworks out of kitchen appliances or something. Yeah, you know, it's
That's awesome.
yeah, it's really wacky, and you're grouped on a team. I've been with my team is called Pirates of Madness, and and not only is it a lot of fun, and for me it's been a way to keep my creativity flowing, but there's also a social good component. It's connected to his charitable endeavor, which is called Random Acts. And so with this book, since again, you know, I was kind of pulling a page out of his playbook in terms of how I structured it with the online aspect, I also wanted to give back. So $1 of every book that is purchased either on my website, which is secrettampabay.com, or at events, you know, a portion of any book that I sell directly, I have been donating to Random Acts as kind of a way.
That
Yeah.
kudos to you. That's wonderful.
Well, thank you. You know, I have so much, not only this season, but in general, to be thankful for. And I
Absolutely.
figure there are two ways that I show my appreciation. And one is just by working even harder than before. And secondly, by finding ways to kind of give something back to the community. So I have been the recipient of late of a tremendous amount of karmic good fortune. So,
Oh, fantastic.
you know, I would be remiss if I didn't try to pass that on. And then, you know, I think a lot about scavenger hunts in general, and I think those have really become kind of the zeitgeist. And I think there's a connection between that and the recent spate of billionaires blasting off into space, and you know, ways I feel like we're all sort of dealing culturally with maybe the end of terrestrial exploration as we know it. I mean, you know, the idea of the pioneer, you know, of course, pioneers like the McMullins, you know, when they moved here, this was open land and you could cut down whatever you wanted and build however much you wanted. You know, we're seeing so much development now, and we have at every phase in sort of Florida's growth, and that's not, you know, Florida alone, but you know, it makes me wonder if maybe maybe we need to find new ways to discover or rediscover things in a world that is largely mapped, where you can get from here to, you know, Saudi Arabia just following your GPS coordinates, where you know, everything has been largely tamed. Now, Florida still has a lot of wilderness and a lot of wildness to it, and the longer I live here, the more important I find that to be, and the more essentially Florida I think that is.
Oh yeah, if you go into Central Florida, portions of Central Florida, it is still very, very much the way it was, you know, a century ago. Especially if those there's a lot of like cattle ranches in that area, lots of land dedicated to that, and it's old Florida at its best. And one of my favorite places is the Ridge, because they have scrub forests that have species that are nowhere else on Earth.
Yeah.
So just to know that an hour away from here, there's a place where you can go where that's the only place these things live is kind of amazing. It really is.
Yeah, and you know, I'm thankful for a lot of the conservation efforts, not only conserving, you know, some of the old pioneer buildings and early settlements, but really the wildness. I think that becomes increasingly important, and that's really kind of a nice segue to you know, well, the Obscuratorium again was something that I created as sort of a rotating window display, largely at my wife's behest, to get some of these things like the haunted doll out of our apartment.
That's really cool.
Yeah, thank you. But I was gonna say, you know, discussing old Florida is really kind of a good segue to oldest Tampa Bay, which is my current and sort of next endeavor. And you probably recognize this photo from the McMullen cabin. Yep, directly behind you. And it's been, you know, fun to sort of, like I said, put my time traveling hat on, because so much has changed. And again, in trying to go and find the oldest of everything, it's like once a week, it's like, oh, this was the oldest, but it's closing. You know, the fate of Haslam's, as I understand it, is still kind of, you know, undetermined, but that was the oldest bookstore in the area, probably by a significant amount. I think they were over 80 years old. I want to say Coney Island Diner, I think, closed.
Yeah.
That was the oldest diner in the area. And so, you know, I'm sort of racing against time to try to write about these things while they're still here. But of course, the McMullen cabin behind you is the oldest two-story, you know, family home. I couldn't say it's the oldest family home because I believe there is one in Ybor that is 175 years old, that is a one-story bungalow that is being restored. You know, some of the oldest parks and gardens, and some of these things have been surprising. Like the oldest public garden, I believe, is the Henry Plant garden, which is, to my way of thinking, very much not the most impressive. The oldest museum, of course, and the third oldest in Florida would be the St. Petersburg History Museum, which I think is celebrating its 100th anniversary this coming year with some major renovations, which I think will be great.
It's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, and again, this idea of blink and you'll miss it. So I really feel like preserving these things, just as you folks preserve things physically. I'm trying to document them, and the oldest wooden canoe, for example, in Weeden Island is thousands of years old. The oldest, I should say, saltwater open water canoe, because sometimes old dugout canoes will wash up in freshwater lakes.
Yes.
But it's really rare because salt water and wood do not really play well together.
Right.
So that was a real find, and it was within the last 10 or 15 years that was discovered, I believe. So.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to pull out of some of these ancient lakes, and it's the whole of Florida is shifting sand, so it's truly, you can find a treasure wherever you go. I know several years back, my husband and I were over by Daytona, and we were on the beach there, and he just caught something like shiny out of the corner of his eye, and it was a pocket watch that had emerged from the sand.
Wow.
And it was an older pocket watch. And you're like, somebody like 50, 70 years ago lost their pocket watch, and now it is revealed.
Yeah, well, a lot of people believe that there are still treasures out there from sunken Spanish galleons.
Oh, yeah.
And from time to time, people find them. So there are still things waiting to be found.
Absolutely.
And oldest Tampa Bay has been a way for me to really understand and discover old Florida, and also to understand the things that really make and shape the Tampa Bay area. And some of those are surprising to people. For example, like you said, ranching. Having grown up in the Northeast, I would not have thought that cattle ranching was such a big deal here, but that was a very big part. The Cracker Cowboys were a big part of the history here, and herding up all the old cows left by the Spaniards. And the same with mining. You don't think of the Tampa Bay area. I mean, you think, well, how can you dig a mine? You're with the water level being so low, but Bone Valley still produces the vast majority of phosphate that is used throughout the country. So, I mean, it's really, as a non-native, as an invasive species, if you will, it has been really eye-opening and really a lot of fun for me to kind of go back in history and to discover these things. And I think that's maybe kind of a segue to why I do this and why I think it's important, not only because every day these things are sort of vanishing. I've developed a passion and an affinity for sort of roadside attractions and offbeat, quirky, strange, wondrous things. But sometimes that means being unhappy with your travel experience. And when most people go on vacation, they want to sit by the beach and they want to be entertained. They want to go to Disney World. They want to be happy. That's fine. Those things are absolutely acceptable. But when you do that, you're getting a very manufactured experience. You're getting the picture of you and your family wearing the Mickey Mouse ears in front of the Magic Kingdom. And you'll look back on that and it'll be great memories. And it'll be memories of your family. When I travel, I want to understand the place. And that means what is beautiful about it, what is unique about it, and sometimes what's tragic and what's upsetting about it. So my wife will attest, no matter where we go, it's New Orleans or Nashville or Philadelphia, I will make a list of things for us to see that often spans several pages. And one of the things on those lists we will go to, and it will reduce me to tears, whether it's a Katrina Memorial in New Orleans, whether it's a Holocaust Memorial in Miami. There's something that will profoundly affect me in a way that is, emotionally upsetting or difficult. But I feel obligated to seek that out because I think that's part of the experience of a place, Rosewood near Cedar Key, all sorts of, there are places you can go in the Tampa Bay area. There's the Holocaust Museum, for example. And those things are important to see, but I think most people probably don't put that on their vacation list the way I do. But then
Right.
I'm kind of a weirdo, and I'm okay. But
I was gonna say your wife sounds very patient.
she should be applying for sainthood by now. It's definitely I can be a little challenging, but I think I try to have a good mix of things. So for every thing that is emotionally upsetting, sometimes I'll go see those while she takes a nap in the afternoon. I try to have as much, shopping and fun and apothecaries and things I know that she will like. So it is hopefully a balance.
Yeah, I mean, it really can be, quite the trope to say, oh, I want something, to balance the experience so that I am not just, comparing happiness to happiness to happiness. I mean, what is it that makes your experience great if you can't realize how lucky you are to be experiencing it?
Yeah.
And so, as cliche as that might be, I think it's really true. You have to, if you can't step back and say, and look at the history of things and say, wow, times used to be really different and really tragic for some people. And I'm very lucky to be where I am today. I think it's important to have that balance. And so I like that you're looking at different things within the area that are not necessarily the uplifting, typical family vacation experience that one might expect to have.
Yeah, and like you said, I think having a balance, but to really understand what shapes a place, what makes it what it is. Some things are fun and happy and wonderful, and other things really give you pause. But I think when you take those kind of risks and when you get off the beaten path, you can have a much deeper experience of a place. And look, like I said, there's nothing wrong with having a Walt Disney kind of experience where you know what you're getting, and you will be entertained, and you will be they're among the very best at doing that. You will probably have a great time. But just a couple blocks away, you could visit the Zora Neale Hurston House, for example, and that it has a very profound history. So when we travel, I try to do both. I try to see what makes it a tourist destination and those things that only the locals know about, or that really, Disney is now 50 years old. Well, that area has been populated by people for thousands and thousands of years. So,
Right.
it's not like Orlando's history suddenly started with Walt Disney. But it's easy to lose sight of that. And sometimes there's things on my list that I look back and say, well, that was pretty dumb. I didn't need to see that. I wasted a half hour of my time. But you can say that, my assistant has just joined us.
Oh,
So this is Tinkerbell, who travels with me.
oh, she's adorable.
Thank you. Yeah, she's the boss. She tells me what we're seeing and what we're not. So let's see. Yeah, I think we've been kind of discussing throughout, but let me ask, maybe there are some questions that you or that other participants have for me.
Well, I will say that one of our participants guessed the Bellevue Biltmore for the earlier riddle.
Yeah, excellent. So nicely done. The White Queen, as she is and has been called.
Yes.
So that is excellent.
And she deserves the moniker for sure.
Yes.
So where's the Obscuratorium?
Okay, so the Obscuratorium is something that I created with Joner at the Paperback Exchange in Newport Richie, and I felt like Newport Richie got a little cheated this time around because Tampa Bay Scavenger only goes as far north as Pinellas. Originally, I think I had like 7 counties in there, but the publisher was like, that's a lot. So I pared it back. But there's it was a way to incorporate both some items from related to Gish, so a lot of Atlas Obscura related items, and a way to essentially, like the Scavenger Hunt, to sort of repopulate some of those wonders that have been lost. I get to be more than just a passive observer. I get to be sort of a curator and put in things that are unique or relevant to Florida, things that I've found along my travels. And that's
in Newport Richie?
It is in the window of the Paperback Exchange.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, you've got some tiki related stuff, some pirate related stuff, some Gish related stuff. There is Olga there. Olga is an allegedly haunted doll that I won in an online contest. And, some people, they enter a contest online and they win like a vacation or a Peloton bike. Like, not me. I win a haunted doll from here.
Haunted dolls for Josh.
Yeah. And now Florida has a long history of haunted dolls because the inspiration for Chucky from the Child's Play movies comes from Robert the Doll, who is on display in Key West.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yes. And
it's just another reason to go back down to Key West.
Yeah, Key West is something. I'm big fan of the Hemingway House, and there's actually, I think there's a Tennessee Williams Museum there as well, a smaller one. There's the Audubon Museum. It's a world unto itself.
Yes, it is.
I'm a big fan. And I don't know if you can see, there's a photo of Hong Kong Willie. There's a little cutout replica of Coral Castle. So I've really tried to make the display. I see a little postcard from the Weeki Wachee Mermaids. I've tried to make it a lot of Floridiana, things that speak to that sort of old Florida vintage nostalgia, and at the same time, things that are new and novel, but And as I mentioned, things that my wife will not let me keep in the house. Like the
I don't blame her for not allowing Olga in your house because that
yeah,
could go really wrong.
straight up pretty
I mean,
creepy. I'm not sad that I found a place where others can enjoy Olga, and I don't have to worry about her moving around behind me. But this idea of kind of mini museums is in and of itself sort of Floridiana, all those little roadside attractions and curio shops and they've always fascinated me. And again, as so many of these are lost, I feel like, hey, if I have the opportunity to bring some of that back, and even if it's one person out of every million who stops and looks in the window and goes, "Oh, what's this all about?" You're making the world stranger and more interesting, and
absolutely. I think
giving.
anytime you can, juxtapose one oddity with another or just anything to make people start thinking about why is it displayed that way or why is it laid out that way or what is that thing? It's bound to get people thinking, I love it. I'm going to have to get up there and take a look at it. That's really cool.
Yeah, please do. And probably in the early part of this next year, I'll change it up a bit and rotate some things in and rotate some things out. And I figure, maybe every season or two we do that to keep it fresh. But that was a great question. Thank you for asking about that.
Awesome. Well, I think that pretty much does it. Thank you so much for being here, Josh. I would like to say that we're going to have your book in our Heritage Village gift shop. And it looks like one of the best Christmas presents that you could get this year. So, because it's something you can do by yourself or something you can do with your family, but it gets you out of the house and really starts you on your journey to understanding your locality better. Like you said before, we often, when we live in a place, take it for granted. It will be there when I get around to it. We'll get there eventually. And like you said, before you know it, it's not there anymore. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to getting my copy, and I hope this book is going to sell well. I know in our gift shop. And where else can people find the book?
Sure. And thank you for asking. It's been so gratifying that so many both large chains and independent sellers carry it. My books are carried at the Tampa Bay History Museum, Visit Tampa Bay, Oxford Exchange, Tombolo Books, where I'll be doing a book signing on the 11th. Of course, Paperback Exchange. More recently, One Amazing Find in Tarpon Springs. And I believe the Tarpon Historical Society, some of those museums carry it. There's a lot of places folks can find it. And of course, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target. And if they want signed copies, they can always find one at secrettampabay.com. Oh, and the Florida Shell Shop, which talking about old Florida. But yeah, I'm so excited about it. And I have some other projects that I'm working on that I'm hoping to release in 2022. So Oldest and maybe the Tampa Bay Tarot, which would be a tarot deck that is entirely references to the local area.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think it would be fun.
Then we definitely look forward to having you back.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you to everybody who joined us. A very happy and safe holiday season to you all, and I can't wait to see you. I'll be at the Largo Central Railroad tomorrow and Sunday, and then in the afternoon on Sunday I'll be at the Postcard Inn. So feel free to stop by, and like I said, be safe, and may all of your travels be filled with wonder and weirdness.
Thank you so much, Josh. Happy holidays.
All right. Take care,
Bye-bye.
Monica. Bye-bye.